Clark Kent stands alone in the Fortress of Solitude, listening to a storm of distress calls from across his world. For years, he has held this earth together with his two hands. But every new war and scheme makes him fear what happens when he fails. Jor-El's crystal shows a strange signal from another universe, where heroes and armies fight a coming shadow that feels like Darkseid, but is not. Clark decides he cannot ignore people in danger, even if they live in another reality, and he activates the old Phantom Zone projector, now tuned as a bridge. White light, cold and heavy, swallows him as the fortress tears away, and he falls toward a different sky that already screams with sirens. New York City shakes, car horns blare, people scream and run. The blue sky tears open above Midtown, a wound of spinning light. A red and blue shape drops out of that wound, trailing fire. Tony Stark is already in his armor, flying as Iron Man, when the scanners start to yell in his ears. FRIDIAY, talk to me. Unidentified energy surge, boss. Not Gamma, not Chitauri, not anything on file. And an object falling at terminal velocity, human shape, very stylish cape. On the street below, a bus jackknifes as people stare up. The falling figure hits the side of a glass tower, bounces, and twists in the air. Red cape whips, blue suit flashes. A bright symbol, like an S, glows on his chest. He slows down. He stops. He hangs there in the air above Times Square, as if he has always known how to float over this world. This guy's not in my contact list, Tony mutters, boosting higher. Captain America sprints out of a nearby SHIELD van, shield on his arm, helmet on. Steve Rogers looks up, eyes hard, taking everything in at once. Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, runs with him, guns holstered, but hands ready. High above, a second tier opens in the sky. Something metal and sharp crawls through it. Tony, Steve says into the comm, we've got incoming. Thor lands on a rooftop in a burst of lightning, hammer in hand, cape snapping. Bruce Banner hangs back in the van, hands shaking, trying not to lose control too fast. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, swings around a corner, eyes wide behind his mask. Mr. Stark, is that Superman? Peter blurts. Wrong comic company, kid, Tony says. But yeah, looks like the name fits. The floating man hears the screams. Clark turns his head. His hearing reaches for the loudest pain. A bridge in the distance is cracking. A truck has hit the side rail. A car teeters, about to fall into the river. He moves. One instant he hangs in the air. The next instant, to human eyes, he vanishes. Wind slams through the streets. Papers fly. Tony's HUD blurs as a blue streak blasts past him. Superman reaches the bridge in less than a second. He grabs the falling car with one hand and the broken rail with the other. The metal shrieks, but holds. Inside the car, a little girl stares at his glowing symbol. You're safe, he says, voice calm. I've got you. Police officers freeze, drivers gape. Someone holds up a phone and starts to stream. Back in Times Square, the thing from the second tier finally squeezes through. It is not a Chitauri ship. It is a black, spidery drone the size of a bus. Its metal skin glows with violet lines. It scans the city, then locks onto Superman's energy signature. It fires. A bolt of violet energy lances across the sky, aimed at the bridge. Superman sees it coming. He pushes the car back onto solid road, makes sure the girl's mother has her, and launches into the air. Heat fills his eyes. Red beams cut out of them and hit the violet blast head-on. The two beams clash. The shockwave rips windows out of nearby buildings. People fall to the ground and cover their heads. Iron Man rockets in and grabs a falling billboard before it crushes a crowd. Big guy has eye lasers, Tony says. Noted. On the rooftop, Thor lifts Mjolnir and calls down a thunderbolt. Lightning hits the drone. Its armor sizzles. It staggers in the air, then steadies itself and fires again, this time at Thor. Superman flashes between them, crossing the distance in a blink. The new bolt hits his chest. He grunts, teeth clenched, and drives forward anyway. He slams shoulder first into the drone and shoves it upward, away from the city. They punch through a cloud layer. The sky goes white around them. Superman grabs the drone by its central spine and squeezes. The metal bends. "Identify yourself," he says, straining. "Who sent you?" The drone speaks in a flat, cold voice. "Energy anomaly marked for harvest. Kryptonian signature confirmed. Reporting to Titan." It explodes. The blast lights the sky like a brief sun. The shockwave hits Superman full in the face and throws him higher. For a moment, he is blind and deaf and tumbling. Then he feels the sun of this universe on his skin. This sun is yellow. It is strong. His cells drink the light like water. Strength roars back into him. He stops tumbling. He hangs in the air again, eyes clear, suit barely scorched. Codex note: in a yellow sun universe, Kryptonian cells work like living solar batteries, charging faster than most reactors can dump energy. Down below, New York stares. Some people cheer. Some just shake and hold each other. Others look up with fear. "Cap, we have an unknown flying tank with heat vision," Tony says. Hovering near Superman now, repulsors ready. And a new drone using words like Kryptonian. Thoughts? Steve stands in the street, shield on his arm, watching. "Let's start simple," he says. We ask who he is. Dr. Strange steps out of a shimmering orange circle onto a rooftop near them. The master of the mystic arts, Stephen Strange, has his cloak of levitation around his shoulders and his hands already glowing with spell light. "The sky is bleeding," Strange says, into no one's comm, and everyone's. That tear is not just a portal. It is a wound in reality, and that man is the needle that sewed it. Superman lowers himself toward the Avengers. He sees the shield, the armor, the hammer, the spider suit, the red-haired spy with cold eyes, the man in the floating cape surrounded by runes. He also sees the people behind them, police, civilians, a city still shaking. "My name is Clark," he says. "On my world, they call me Superman. I came because I felt your world was in danger." Iron Man keeps a cautious distance. "Okay, Super. I'm Iron Man. This is Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange. We're the local neighborhood superhero union, and this is our neighborhood." "You fell out of a tear in the multiverse," Doctor Strange says, floating closer, eyes narrowed. "You brought a drone from somewhere else. That drone knew your species. That worries me more than your cape." Superman nods once. "That worries me too." The tear above them shudders. It stretches wider for a second, then snaps back. Everyone feels the air pressure change. "Whatever device you used," Strange says, "it weakened something. This reality is not built for that bridge." Clark looks up at the tear. He thinks of the Phantom Zone projector. He thinks of the fortress shaking apart as he left. He feels a tightness in his chest, not from any blast, but from guilt. "I will fix it," he says, "if I can." Another alarm screams in Tony's helmet. "Guys," he says, "we've got more problems. That drone dropped something before it blew. Energy spike near the old Stark Tower, Tesseract signature, and something new." Steve looks at him. "We move," he says. He lifts his shield and starts giving orders. "Stark, Strange, you take point on the energy. Thor, you're with them. Natasha, get S.H.I.E.L.D. and the NYPD to lock down this area and keep people safe. Spider-Man, help her. Banner stays in reserve. He turns to Superman. You say you came to help, Steve says. We could use it, but if you hurt people, if you lose control, I will stop you. Do you understand? Clark holds his gaze. I do, he says. Where I come from, I made the same promise. They move. The old Stark Tower still bears the faded outline of the A. The streets around it clear fast as shield trucks roll in. Agents set up barriers. Drones buzz. The building itself hums with a low, strange sound like a huge power line. Inside the lobby, glass vibrates. A blue cube, the Tesseract's old home, no longer sits in its cage, but echoes of its energy still live in the walls. At the center of the lobby floor, a shard of black crystal spins slowly in the air. Violet lines pulse along it. Tiny arcs of energy jump to the walls and back. The whole tower feels like a giant antenna. Tony and Doctor Strange enter first. Thor follows, hammer ready. Superman walks in last, shoulders tense, cape trailing dust. Energy readings are off the charts, Tony says. Same as that drone, plus some familiar spice. The Tesseract was here, Strange says. Space Stone. It knows how to talk to other dimensions. Your crystal is using that memory, like a password. Superman steps closer to the shard. It's from the projector, he says quietly. From the device that brought me. Part of it broke off in the jump. The crystal flares brighter, reacting to his voice, his presence. The air gets heavy. Lights pop. A nearby window shatters and rains glass. Thor raises Mjolnir. Shall I smash it? He asks. No, Strange and Superman say at the same time. They look at each other. If you hit it hard, it might fracture the barrier the wrong way, Strange says. We get more tears. Maybe something worse than your drone pushes through. If we do nothing, Superman says, eyes on the shard. It keeps feeding on this world. It will pull on my Earth. Both could break. Iron Man floats a little closer. Okay, time out. We need a plan that doesn't end in both universes explode, because that is bad for business. Spider-Man sticks to the wall near the ceiling. Can we unplug it? He asks. Like, shut off power at the main switch? Strange nods slowly. Maybe, if we build a binding circle around it, shift the energy into a pocket dimension. Superman frowns. A prison dimension. Safer than having it gnaw on two universes at once, Strange says. Superman's jaw tightens. He remembers Zod. He remembers the Phantom Zone. He remembers how prison dimensions can become tools for monsters. Or, Tony says, we can try to tune it, not shut it down. Make a stable bridge. We learn to aim it. Best way home for you. New toy for us. Steve's voice crackles over the comm from outside. Stark, report. Tony opens his mouth, then glances at Superman and Strange. He hesitates. Working on it, he says finally. They circle the shard. Strange traces glowing symbols in the air. Tony fires scanning beams from his gauntlets. Superman narrows his hearing and tries to listen to the pattern of the energy, like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, the crystal screams. It flashes violet-white. A wave of force slams outward. Strange throws up a shield. Iron Man rolls his armor's power to max. Thor plants his feet. Superman dives toward the shard, trying to grab it and contain the blast. His fingers close around hard, burning edges. The wave throws them all back. Windows burst out from the tower in a ring. The blast hits the street, knocks over cars, smashes shield drones, and sends agents flying. Steve raises his shield over a group of civilians, teeth gritted, as glass and energy slam into the vibranium disc. When the light fades, the shard hangs in the air again, larger now. Its violet veins are deeper. Tiny tears in space swirl around it, each one showing a flicker of other skies. "Okay," Tony says, picking himself off the ground. "So the rock has opinions." Strange winces, pressing a hand to his chest where the blast hit. "It is learning," he says, "and something on the other end is watching us through it." Superman looks at his hands. Tiny cuts across his palms glow faint violet before closing. For the first time in a long time, he feels a new kind of ache in his bones. He looks at the shard. "We can't let that thing stay here," he says, "on any world." Steve walks into the lobby now, shield still in hand, suit dusty. Natasha moves at his side, eyes scanning for threats. "Then we need a secure place to hold it," Steve says. "And we need to decide who gets to make that call." He looks at Superman when he says it. Superman meets his gaze and understands. This is not just a fight. This is politics. News spreads fast. By night, every screen in the world shows the same images. A man in a blue suit lifting a car off a bridge. A red cape. Heat beams in the sky. A glowing black crystal in an old tower. News anchors talk of a new god in the sky. Politicians talk about unregulated foreign weapons. People in cafes argue. Kids online make fan art. In a dark office, Secretary Thaddeus Ross watches the footage with tight lips. The Sokovia Accords, the world's control law for superhumans, sit in a folder on his desk. "We barely got the last group to sign," Ross says to his staff. "Now we have an alien with the power of a nuclear arsenal and no leash." He jabs a finger at Superman's frozen face on the screen. "Find out everything about him, and make sure the Avengers understand. If he is on their team, he is under the Accords, or he is a threat." On the other side of the world, in a throne room filled with singing steel, a huge purple figure sits on a stone chair in the dark. Thanos watches the same footage on a hovering display. The image of Superman fighting the drone plays in slow motion. "Kryptonian," he murmurs. "I have heard the whisper of that word from old, broken worlds." Ebony Moore, his thin, grey-skinned servant, bows low. "The drone confirmed the energy pattern," Moore says. "The bridge shard is in their hands now, and they do not understand it." Thanos closes his fist. The Power Stone, hidden in another universe for now, is not his yet. But the plan moves. "A universe that breeds such champions tries to protect itself," Thanos says. "But every shield has a shape. Every shape has a seam." He smiles very slightly. "Prepare a way to dim their sun," he says, "and prepare a way to break their trust in him." The Avengers gather in a secure meeting room at the compound. The black crystal now rests in a containment field in the lab below. Doctor Strange has woven spells into the walls. Tony has built a maze of fail-safe devices around it. Their hum runs through the floor. Superman stands near one wall, arms crossed, cape still torn at the edges. He feels all the eyes on him. Steve, Tony, Natasha, Bruce, Thor, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange sit or stand around the central table. Holographic screens float above it, showing the tear in the sky, the crystal, maps of energy flows. "Let's make this simple," Tony says. "Superman wants to help. We need help. We have a time bomb rock that connects to his universe and maybe to a big purple guy with a chair. So we make a plan together." Steve nods. "But we also have laws now," he says. "The Accords. The world got scared after Sokovia, after Ultron. People want control." Natasha looks at Superman. "They will want control of you," she says. "More than any of us." Superman takes a breath. "Where I come from, I answer to people, not to governments," he says. "I made a promise. I do not kill. I do not rule. I help. That's all." Cute, Tony says. But the last guy who said, "I just want to help," dropped a city from the sky. People are nervous. Bruce rubs his forehead. We also have to think like scientists, he says. That crystal isn't just a problem. It's a kind of bridge machine. If we can understand how it links two universes, we might save both. Strange's eyes flick to Superman. Every time we touch it, the tear grows, he says. The rules of space and time bend. I can feel it through the time stone. Our universe can take only so much strain. Thor leans on his hammer. In Asgard, when great powers clash, we bind them with oaths and with watchers, he says. Who watches you here, Superman? Who binds you if you lose yourself? Superman holds his gaze. I let people judge me, he says. I have stood before courts, before governments, before the people I saved and the people I failed. I accept that. Steve studies him. You're willing to be held to account, he asks. Yes. Tony raises an eyebrow. So you'll sign the accords? He asks. The room goes quiet. Superman looks at the hologram of the Sokovia Accords on the table. It lists control points, leashes, chains, some might say. I will not be a weapon for one country, he says slowly, or one council. I will listen. I will answer questions. I will obey fair laws. But if someone orders me to let innocent people die when I could save them, I won't stand down, not for a piece of paper. Steve exhales, almost smiling. You sound familiar, he says. Tony rubs his eyes. Great, another idealist with biceps, he mutters. Natasha's lips twitch. Spider-Man shifts in his chair. That is the clash, Strange says quietly. Order and control versus free will and duty. And while we debate, Thor says, the crystal stirs. An alarm beeps softly. The hologram of the shard shows a slow rise in energy. Right, Tony says. Mission first, politics later. We know the shard is talking to something. We know the drone was just a probe. We need to find their base of operations, cut the signal. Bruce brings up a new set of displays, space maps. Strange symbols overlay them. The pattern matches deep space signals near Saturn, Bruce says. S.H.I.E.L.D. picked up some strange ship paths there after the Chitauri invasion. Something big is hiding around Titan's old orbit. Superman feels the shape of the solar system in his mind. He can hear radio waves, see gravity wells, even if this sun is slightly different from home. I can reach Saturn in minutes, he says, if I push myself. Tony nods. You and Thor can handle space. Strange can sling a portal to low orbit. Cap, Nat, Spider-Man, and I handle any ground-based reaction. Banner supports from here. We take the fight to whoever sent that drone. Steve nods. But we keep the shard under guard, he says. Strange. I will leave wards and the time stones echo here, Strange says. Wong can assist at the sanctum. Then we move, Steve says. We show this universe and this new one that we stand together, at least for now. Superman looks around the table. Iron Man's sarcasm, Cap's steady gaze, Black Widow's sharp watch, Thor's pride, Banner's worry, Spider-Man's awe, Strange's cool logic. He feels for a brief moment like he did the first time he flew with a team on his world. He nods. Let's go. The Avengers space operation begins with light. Doctor Strange opens a portal high above the planet, a ring of fire in the sky. Thor rides a beam of Bifrost energy up from the compound. Iron Man blasts through the portal on bright repulsors, faceplate down, systems humming. Superman flies on his own. He does not need a portal or a ship. He passes through the thin, cold layer of air above the clouds and into the black. The curve of Earth glows under him. City lights wink. The sun, this new sun, burns yellow ahead. He slows only when he reaches the edge of space where Strange's portal hangs. "Not bad," Tony says over comms. "You beat my best rocket time. Don't tell NASA." Thor floats nearby, Mjolnir at his side. "You fly without magic or machine," Thor says, eyes bright. "You are like the old tales of Asgardians before we learn to forge ships." "I just go," Superman says, a little shy. "On your mark, Strange," Tony says. From the planet's surface, in the sanctum, Dr. Strange closes his eyes. He feels the shard pulsing in his wards. He feels the matching pulse somewhere near Saturn. He twists his hands, and the portal before Superman and the others stretches across the void. A ring of fire opens over the rings of Saturn. On the other side, a dark shape waits. A ship, huge and jagged, hangs above the dead world of Titan. Smaller craft circle it. Energy flares from its sides, feeding into a central device that glows with violet light. "That is not a friendly cruise liner," Tony says. Superman hears something else. Within that device, he feels a taste of the crystal's song. His skull aches. "They are using a piece of the same tech," he says. "Maybe part of another drone." "Then we break it," Thor says. The plan moves fast. Iron Man and Thor draw fire. They streak toward the ship, firing repulsors and lightning, making themselves targets. Small enemy craft, knife-shaped fighters, pour out to meet them. Energy blasts cross the void. Superman dives for the central device. He hits the ship like a comet. Metal tears around him. Air rushes into space. Alarms scream in alien tongues. He pushes through bulkheads like paper, heading straight for the beating violet heart. Inside the ship, thick metal ribs stretch around a core chamber. At the center, another black crystal, larger than the one on Earth, hangs in a cage of beams. Wires feed it. Energy pulses out to the fleet. Guarding it, standing on a raised platform, is a tall, thin figure in dark robes. Ebony Moore smiles when Superman bursts in. "Kryptonian," Moore says. "The Titan thanks you for opening a door." "I'm closing it," Superman says. He charges. Moore raises his hands. Telekinetic force slams Superman backwards. Heavy beams rip up from the floor and wrap around him, bending around his body, pinning his arms to his sides. "I have moved cities with my mind," Moore says calmly. "You cannot break my grip." Superman strains. The beams groan. Moore's eyes narrow. Sweat beads on his forehead. "Maybe not in one push," Superman says, teeth gritted. "But I don't quit." Outside, Iron Man and Thor are busy. "Stark, they're targeting the portal," Thor calls. "If it closes while we are here, we'll be stuck with Mr. Creepy Fingers and his crystal," Tony says, dodging another blast. "Yeah, I got that. Strange, keep the door open." On Earth, Strange strains to hold the portal. The shard in the lab pulses harder, pulling on the magic circle around it. Wong chants at his side. "This bridge is unstable," Strange says, sweat on his brow. "If it breaks at the wrong moment, we get a split. Half of them fall somewhere else, or everywhere." Back on the ship, Superman finally snaps one of the beams, then another. Moore snarls and tightens his grip. A metal shard pierces Superman's side. He gasps in real pain. "You bleed," Moore says, fascinated. "Good. You can learn fear." Superman pulls himself forward anyway. Every step is like dragging a mountain. He reaches the edge of the cage, holding the crystal. "Who is the Titan?" he asks, breathless. Moore tilts his head. "Thanos," he says, "the savior of your kind. He will welcome you when he remakes the universe with half the pain, half the mouths, half the waste." "I've heard men like that before," Superman says. "They called themselves saviors too." He rips the last beam free. The crystal flares. A wave of violet energy rushes out. It slams through more, through Superman, through the ship, and out into space. Every craft in the fleet shudders. On Earth, the shard in the lab screams in answer. The tear in the New York sky opens wider for a moment. People on the streets point and shout. Strange feels the pull on his portal like a hook in his chest. Moore staggers, coughing. Superman drops to one knee, dizzy. The crystal's song in his head gets louder. He sees for a moment both worlds at once. His Earth, broken fortress, flashing police lights, faces he knows. This Earth, Avengers, New York, a child on a bridge, both hanging on a thin thread of violet light. He reaches out and grabs the crystal with both hands. No more, he says. Heat pours out of him. Sun energy, stored in his cells, flows into the crystal and fights the violet light. The chamber fills with blinding brightness. Outside, Thor and Iron Man see the ship's core glow white. Time to go, Tony yells. They fire everything they have at the ship's weapons and cutters, then fly for the portal as the hull starts to crack. Superman feels his own strength draining. The crystal shakes. Tiny fractures race across its surface. The shard on Earth wails. Clark, Steve's voice snaps in his ear through the comm. Get out of there. Superman thinks of leaving. He also thinks of what happens if this crystal explodes in deep space, or worse, pours its energy into the tear and tears both universes apart. He squeezes harder. Cracks race across the crystal. It shatters. The shockwave throws Superman into the wall. The ship rips in half. Vacuum sucks debris out into space. Moore screams as he is pulled away, clinging to broken metal. Thor's hand grabs Superman's arm. Come, friend, Thor shouts. We flee together. He drags Superman out through the hole and toward the portal just as the ship's reactor goes critical. They dive through the ring of fire. Iron Man follows. The portal snaps shut behind them. In orbit above Earth, a small, fierce sun flares and dies as the ship explodes. On the ground, the shard in the lab cracks and dims. The tear above New York shrinks again, for now. They land back at the compound in a blast of dust and exhaust. Superman stumbles as his boots hit concrete. His vision swims. For the first time since he got here, he feels weak, like he did after fighting Doomsday on his own world. Bruce runs up with a scanner. You poured out a lot of energy, he says. Cellular reserves down. Radiation patterns off the charts. I'll be fine, Superman says, breathing hard. I just need sunlight. He steps outside into the open courtyard. The sun is lower now, but still bright. He turns his face up. Warmth spills over him. Slowly, the heaviness in his limbs eases. Inside, the team gathers around the cracked shard in the lab. It's not dead, Strange says, hands hovering over the containment field. It's sleeping, and it's changed. The link to that ship is gone, but the path it cut is still there. Tony folds his arms. We cut off one finger of the guy with the big gauntlet, he says. He still has the hand. Steve's jaw is tight. We did what we could, he says. We kept both worlds from blowing apart today. Natasha looks from the shard to the security cameras, showing Superman in the yard, soaking in the sun. And we showed the world what he can do, she says softly, and what it costs him. Power scaling interlude. Shield report, classified, author, Dr. Bruce Banner. Kryptonian subject known as Superman gains power from our yellow sun at a rate that makes conventional weapons almost pointless. However, his energy is not infinite. Heavy use, like feeding a multiversal crystal until it fractures, drains his reserves and leaves him vulnerable for a time. The enemy, now confirmed to serve a being called Thanos, has already tried to harvest and weaponize Kryptonian energy. They could learn to mimic a red sun spectrum or synthesize exotic matter that disrupts his cells. Countermeasures on our side include building controlled red light fields to limit him if he loses control, or armor that can shield him from enemy red spectrum attacks. Both options carry major costs. The first risks turning him into a prisoner. The second risks an arms race that will scare every government on Earth. Up to now, Superman has saved a city, helped destroy a deep space weapon, and tied his fate to a group called the Avengers. Now the world and the enemy begin to react to him. Up to now, Superman has fallen into the Marvel Universe, saved New York, fought a deep space weapon near Titan, and broken a crystal bridge that tied his world to this one. The shard on Earth still lives, the tear in the sky still bleeds, and a warlord named Thanos now knows exactly how much a Kryptonian can endure. The world wakes up angry and afraid. In Washington, cameras flash as reporters shout questions at a line of officials. On the screens behind them, the image of Superman holding back the bridge car loops again and again. They cut between that and new footage of the Saturn explosion. Secretary Ross stands at a podium. An unregistered alien with unknown limits, Ross says, voice flat but hard, just engaged in combat in our solar system without authorization. His actions affected a dangerous multiversal object stored on our soil. This cannot continue without oversight. A senator leans toward a microphone. Do we know he isn't working with this Thanos? She asks. They share technology. Their energies link. How do we know this wasn't a staged fight? In New York, people argue in bars and living rooms. He saved that little girl, one man says. You saw it. He also blew out windows for 5 blocks, a woman answers. He fights like a bomb. We're just standing next to it. Online, tags start to trend. Thanks Superman. Team Avengers. Alien threat. At the Avengers compound, the team watches the news in tired silence. Spider-Man sits on the edge of a table, mask off, eyes worried. They're scared, Peter says quietly. I get it, but this is a lot. Steve stands with his arms folded. Fear is easy, he says. Trust takes work. Superman watches himself on the screen, frozen mid-flight. He hears every worried voice, even through the walls, because his hearing reaches farther than any wire. I've seen this before, he says, on my Earth. People are grateful until they remember how small they feel next to you. Then they look for chains. Tony glances at him. They're not wrong to want rules, he says. We screwed up before. Sokovia, Ultron. We made messes we couldn't clean. We, Natasha says, also stopped things no one else could stop. Bruce rubs his eyes. We're doing this all over again, he says. Another registration fight. Doctor Strange stands near the window, cloak shifting by itself. We do not have time for an old argument, Strange says. The shard is waking. The tear in the sky has doubled in size since your trip to Saturn, and the time stone shows waves. He lifts his hand. A faint green glow wraps his fingers. I see lights flashing from our universe to another and back, he says. Each flash cuts more deeply. If it continues, the two realities will either snap apart or crush together. Both are bad. Thor frowns. Where does this path lead? He asks. Strange's jaw tightens. To a convergence, he says. A storm where worlds overlap, where gravity, magic, and time all tangle. Superman feels a chill that has nothing to do with space. How long? Steve asks. Days, Strange answers. Maybe less if someone pushes. They do not have to wait long for the push. S.H.I.E.L.D. picks up distress signals from 3 places at once. First, A power plant on the east coast glows with strange violet light. Workers report floating figures and warped hallways. Second, a prison transport in the Atlantic screams for help, then goes silent. Last word, portal. Third, the sky over Sokovia flickers with a thin, jagged tear, just like the one over New York, but smaller and unstable. Fury's voice arrives over the compound comms, calm and rough as ever. "We've got a three-front mess," Nick Fury says. "We don't have enough bodies. You're going to have to choose where to hit first." Steve and Tony stand at the planning table. Holograms show the 3 red markers. "The plant," Bruce says at once. "If that goes, we lose a big chunk of the grid and maybe half a state." "Sokovia," Natasha says. "If the tear grows there, people will think it's all starting again. They still remember Ultron. That place is a wound." "The prison ship," Tony says. "If someone is opening portals there, they may be trying to free a high-value asset or dump something nasty into our ocean." They all look at Superman. He knows what they are doing. They are asking him to pick. "We split up," he says. "I can cover 2. "You are strong," Strange says, "but you are not 3 places at once. Every time you push yourself like that, you shake the bridge between worlds." Tony taps the table. "We make teams," he says. "Thor and I take the power plant. Strange and Banner monitor from here and patch us with magic. Cap, Nat and Spidey handle the prison ship with shield backup." "And me?" Superman asks. Steve's eyes meet his. "You take Sokovia," Steve says. "No one moves faster. That tear is the one that looks most like the first. If it breaks open, we could get another invasion through a wounded country that already hates that word." Superman nods slowly. "I'll go," he says. He pauses. "But remember this," he adds. "Wherever I don't go, people may die. That is not my choice alone. That's on all of us." He rises into the air and is gone in a blur. Thor slaps his hand on the table. "We move," he says, "for Midgard." The Avengers split. Sokovia is grey when Superman arrives. The small city still bears scars from when Ultron tried to lift it into the sky. Broken foundations. New buildings with steel bones next to old ones with patched brick. People move fast under the open sky, nervous now around tall shapes. Above the city, the tear hangs like a crooked scar. Violet edges. Wind rushes toward it, along with dust and loose paper. Superman feels the pull even from far away. It tugs at his atoms. He hears a child crying and a mother praying in a language he only half knows. He hears a news anchor shouting about the alien even as he arrives. He lands in the town square. People freeze. A rock bounces off his chest. A man shouts in Sokovian. Superman's hearing translates the rage. "Not again," the man yells. "No more gods playing with our lives." Superman holds up his hands, palms open. "I came to stop this," he says, "not to cause it." The tear above them groans. A thin bolt of violet energy shoots down, hits a statue, and slices it in half. Stone slams into the ground. Superman looks up. No time for a speech. He launches toward the tear. Around him, the air feels wrong. Time seems to slow and speed in tiny jerks. He hears echoes of his own voice from other seconds. His skin tingles. Inside the edge of the tear, he sees flashes of another sky. His Earth. He hears a police siren from Metropolis, layered over a Sokovian one. He pushes his hands out, not touching the tear itself, but pressing against the air around it, like holding a broken wall. His strength fights the pull. "Come on," he mutters. "Stay closed." Down below, cameras roll. Back in the Atlantic, Captain America and Black Widow fight on the deck of a rolling prison ship. Portals snap open and shut. Masked mercenaries with unfamiliar symbols on their gear try to cut prisoners free. Spider-Man swings from crane to crane, webbing up men with energy rifles. Scarlet energy signature, Natasha calls, shooting at a portal generator. Not like strangers. Feels more cruel. Cap throws his shield. It slams into a device on the rail, sends it overboard. A portal half forms, sparks, and dies. "Who sent you?" Cap shouts at one of the captured mercs. "Titan," the man spits. "He says your god from the sky is the first to fall." Cap's jaw tightens. At the power plant, Thor and Iron Man dodge beams of violet light from machines that used to guide simple electricity. Someone has laced the grid with shard energy. "Great," Tony says. "They hacked my world and my genre at the same time." Thor smashes a twisted transformer with Mjolnir. Lightning jumps, but follows the hammer instead of the new path. Alarms blare. "Stark, the energy is trying to jump to space," Bruce's voice says over the comm. "If it reaches orbit, it can ride the shard's path to the tear. You have to break the loop." "I'm working on it," Tony says, sweat on his neck. "Tell the alien sun battery to hang in there." In Sokovia, Superman feels the loop. The tear tugs harder as the power plant sends more energy. He grits his teeth and pushes back. The air around him ripples. He hears Tony's voice faintly in his ear. He hears Bruce. He hears Strange chanting somewhere far away. He also hears something else, a whisper inside the tear. "Kryptonian," it says. Ebony Moore's voice. "You cannot hold back the tide alone. Let go. Let worlds combine. Half the pain will vanish." Superman snarls. "No," he says. Another bolt shoots down, this time toward a cluster of houses. He splits his focus. One hand pushes the air. With his other, he fires heat vision, catching the bolt mid-fall and breaking it. For a moment, the tear shrinks. Then the power plant surge hits, and it jerks wider. He feels his strength drain faster now. The light from the Sokovian sun is weaker than New York's. Clouds cut it. His arms shake. "Clark," Steve's voice comes over the comm. "We're holding here. Thor and Tony are cutting power. Can you last a few more minutes?" Superman laughs once, breathless. "I don't know," he admits, "but I'll try." Down below, people watch the figure in the sky straining against nothing. Some see a savior, some see a threat, many see both. A little boy points. "Mama, is he going to drop us?" he asks. His mother holds him close. "I don't know," she whispers. The fight ends almost at the same time on all fronts. At the power plant, Tony finds the core device where shard energy has been spliced into the grid. He and Thor work together. Iron Man severs the control lines with surgical blasts, while Thor channels the overload into his hammer and throws the extra lightning back into the clouds. The loop to space breaks. On the prison ship, Cap and Nat shut down the last portal generator. Spider-Man webs it into a neat ball, then kicks a merc into a cell and slams the door. In Sokovia, the pull on the tear weakens. Superman feels the line slacken. He shoves one last time. The tear shrinks and snaps closed with a soft pop. Silence. He floats there, breathing hard, soaked with sweat, suit torn at the shoulders. His vision blurs at the edges. He starts to fall. A shield Quinjet roars up, ramp open. Falcon, Sam Wilson, flies out on his wings and grabs Superman under one arm. "Whoa there, big guy," Sam says. "Let's not add a crater." He hauls Superman into the jet. On the ground, Sokovians look up at the empty sky. Some clap. Some just sit down on the pavement and cry. Others look at the thin line burned across the clouds where the tear was and shudder. In a cafe, a TV shows a commentator shouting. "He saved us," one guest says. "And almost broke the world in the process," another counters. "His fight reached the power grid. He draws trouble. So did Ultron. So did the Avengers." Hours later, a different fight begins in a glass hall. The United Nations has called an emergency session. Flags line the walls. Delegates sit in rows. Cameras stream. At the front, a panel table waits. Behind it, the Sokovia Accord symbol hangs large. Secretary Ross sits in the center seat. To his right, a UN official from Wakanda. To his left, a European leader who still remembers the age of Ultron. In the seat at the witness table, Clark Kent, in his suit, no glasses, no mask, hands folded on the wood. Behind him sit Steve, Natasha, Bruce, Thor, Tony, Strange, and Peter. They feel the pressure of every eye. Ross leans in. "Mr. Kent," Ross says, "you are not a citizen of any known country. You have the power to level cities. Today, you single-handedly altered a cosmic event above Sokovia. That event, we are told, nearly tore our universe open. Why do you think you should be allowed to act without clear legal control?" Clark meets his eyes. His voice is calm. "I do not act without control," he says. "I control myself. I follow my code. I do not kill. I protect. I answer when people call for help. I do not serve a flag. I serve people." The Wakandan official, a woman with sharp eyes, speaks. "And when your judgment clashes with ours," she asks, "when you say, 'save them,' and we say, 'wait'?" "Then we argue," Clark says. "We work it out. But if the building is falling and you are still talking, I will catch it. I will accept the blame after." Murmurs ripple through the hall. Tony winces. "Points for honesty," he mutters. Ross taps the Accords folder. "These are the law," Ross says. "Every enhanced individual of note has signed or is now considered a criminal. We cannot have exceptions. Not for you." Steve leans toward the microphone in front of him. "With respect, General," he says, "laws are living things. We change them when we find new facts. Superman is a new fact." Ross ignores him. "We have also learned," Ross continues, eyes on Clark, "that the enemy you brought with you, this Thanos, may be using your very biology to arm his weapons. Does that not suggest you are a threat even when you do nothing?" Clark's hands tighten. "Thanos is the threat," he says. "I am a shield. He is trying to convince you to throw the shield away." Ross nods to a tech at the side. The room lights dim. A hologram appears in the air. The Saturn ship explosion slowed down. It shows Superman inside the crystal chamber. It shows him gripping the core and pouring energy into it. "With each use of your power," Ross says, "this shard and the tear react. Your mere presence fuels the bridge between realities. You are not just a shield, Mr. Kent. You are a battery." Silence. Natasha looks at Bruce. His face has gone pale. "Is that true?" she whispers. Bruce nods slowly. "We don't know the scale yet," he says. "But yeah, the readings were clear. His energy and the shard's energy feed each other." Strange stands, uninvited. "That is not the whole truth," Strange says. "Yes, his presence interacts with the tear. So does mine. So do the stones. We live in a web of forces. You cannot blame one string for the whole net." Ross slams his hand down. "This is not your hearing, Doctor," he snaps. He turns back to Clark. "We are faced with a simple choice," Ross says. "We can bring you under our laws, or we can treat you as an uncontrolled hazard." He reaches under the table and presses a hidden switch. Lights shift. A faint red glow floods the hall. Clark feels it at once. His skin prickles. His stomach drops. The strength in his muscles leaks away fast. He grips the table to stay upright. Red spectrum emitters, Bruce says, horrified. Ross, what are you doing? Security guards step forward. They carry devices that hum in the same red tone. Containment, Ross says. If he refuses the accords, we will hold him until we understand him. This is not an attack. This is safety. You're pulling a gun in the middle of a talk, Steve says, rising. That's an attack. Thor stands, hand going to his hammer. Wakanda's delegate looks shocked. General Ross, this was not part of our agreement, she says sharply. Clark tries to stand. His legs shake. The red light eats at his cells like cold fire. He feels for the first time almost human weak. He could still fight. He could slam the table aside. He could push through the guards and shatter the emitters. But he knows that every second on camera will play back across 1,000 screens. He sees a path in his mind, rage, smashed walls, people screaming as an alien breaks a UN hall. He closes his eyes for a heartbeat. I will not fight you, he says. Then the wall explodes. Violet energy blasts through the side of the hall, sending stone and glass flying. People scream and duck. The red lights flicker. A long, black spear of alien metal whips through the smoke and cuts 3 red spectrum emitters in half. Guards fall. Ebony Moore floats in through the hole, eyes glowing. Humans, Moore says, voice dripping with scorn. You do my master's work for him. You weaken your greatest defender. You cage your shield. He raises his hands. Delegates rise from their seats, choking as invisible force grabs them by the throat. Ross gasps, clutching at his neck. The Wakandan woman's eyes bulge. People kick against nothing. Clark stands. The red light still burns, but the broken emitters give him a little room. Just enough. He staggers forward. Let them go, he tells Moore. Moore smiles. And what will you do if I don't? Moore asks. You can barely stand. Superman looks at the choking delegates, at Ross, who just tried to cage him, at people who wanted to chain him, and people who wanted to defend him. Then he looks back at Moore. I'll stand between you and them anyway, he says. He launches himself across the hall, slower than usual, but still faster than any normal man. Moore flings him into a pillar with a flick of his wrist. Stone cracks, dust falls. Strange throws a spell. Golden bands lash out toward Moore. The alien twists his fingers and sends the band slamming into the ceiling. Steve, Nat, and Tony move in, shielding as many people as they can. Cap uses his shield to block falling stone. Nat fires at the violet device hovering behind Moore. Tony's armor snaps around him in a burst, repulsors charging. Get the red lights off, Bruce shouts. He needs full power. Guards scramble to hit emergency switches. The glow fades a little more. Superman pushes rubble off his chest and stands again. Pain flares in his ribs. He coughs dust. He steps toward Moore once more. You can't stop us, Moore says, hurling benches like toys. The convergence is coming. Every blow you throw against the shard only widens the wound. Thanos thanks you, Kryptonian. You are his anchor. Superman ducks a bench and keeps walking. He doesn't know me, he says. I don't break. I bend the world away from monsters like him. He lunges. Moore hurls everything he can. Metal, stone, people. Superman takes the hits on his shoulders and back, grunts, but does not stop. At last, he reaches Moore and wraps his arms around him in a rough tackle. They slam into the far wall and through it, out into a balcony over the city. Moore snarls and drives a shard of stone into Superman's side. Blood blooms, bright red. Clark holds on. This is not your planet, Moore hisses. Why do you care? Because they're people, Clark says. Like mine. That's enough. He headbutts more, not gently. The alien's concentration snaps. The choking delegates drop to the floor, gasping. The floating rubble crashes down. Strange throws up a shield to catch most of it. On the balcony, Moore flicks his fingers in a last, desperate move. A loose, red spectrum emitter yanks free and slams into Superman's back, flaring bright. Clark cries out. His grip weakens. Moore slips from his arms and flies upward, wounded but not caught. "We will see you at the end of all things," Moore says, vanishing into a violet beam. The beam shoots toward the sky, toward the tear over New York. The red emitter on Superman's back burns hot. He rips it free and throws it aside. His knees hit the balcony. Inside the hall, people push themselves up. Ross coughs, eyes wild. "He protected us," the Wakandan delegate says, looking at Clark. "Even after what you did." Cameras keep rolling. Codex note. Red spectrum fields tuned to a Kryptonian's home sun can weaken them to near-human levels, but only while the field is active. Turning it off lets their solar reserves refill, unless those reserves are fully spent or blocked. Up to now, Superman has faced a growing crisis on 3 fronts: stopped a tear over Sokovia, and bled in a UN hall where humans tried to cage him even as an alien servant attacked. The universe has seen him strong and has seen him weak, and the enemy has called him an anchor for a coming convergence. In the days that follow, the world splits. Some nations issue statements praising Superman's bravery at the UN. They show clips of him shielding delegates from falling stone. Their leaders say words like ally and partner. Others replay the image of him tackling Moore through the wall and focus on the blood on his side, the broken marble, the roar of his blows. They say danger and unknown. On talk shows, people shout over each other. "We saw what happens when you can turn off his power," one guest says. "We need more of those red lights." "And what happens when Thanos wins and we've chained our best chance?" another fires back. The Accords Council meets behind closed doors. "We must tighten control," Ross argues. "We build a network of red spectrum satellites. We tie them to a single command. If Superman ever goes rogue, we flip the switch." The Wakandan delegate shakes her head. "You are trying to leash a storm while a bigger one is coming," she says. "We should be asking how to fight Thanos, not how to own Superman." "Both," Ross says coldly. "We do both." Elsewhere, in Wakanda itself, T'Challa, the Black Panther, watches the recordings with his sister Shuri. "He is like you," Shuri says, chin in her hands. "A king without a crown. People look up and see something bigger than they are. It scares them." "He is not my king," T'Challa says, "but I see his heart. He stood between an enemy and the world, even when that world would cage him. That says much." "Will you back him?" Shuri asks. "I will back what protects my people," T'Challa says. "If that means standing with him, I will. If that means telling him no when his power goes too far, I will do that too." He looks out over the golden force field around Wakanda and thinks of alien ships. Back at the compound, the Avengers argue. Tony, Bruce, and Strange stand around a projection of the Shard's energy pattern. Steve, Nat, Thor, and Superman stand nearby. Peter hovers at the edge, wanting to help but unsure how. Strange gestures at the hologram. "The tear is no longer just above New York," he says. "It is starting to spread in thin lines around the planet, tiny fractures. If the convergence hits full force, those lines will light up. Areas of both universes will overlap. Like cities stacked on cities," Bruce says. "Gravity pulling in 2 directions at once. Physically impossible. People would..." not survive that. Thanos wants that, Strange says. He wants chaos. He wants us to break ourselves trying to stop it. And he wants Superman here when it happens. Because of the anchor thing, Peter says quietly. Strange nods. Superman is tied to both worlds now. His energy signature matches the Shard's bridge. If Thanos can seize control of that bridge at the right moment, he could use Clark to choose which parts of each universe live or die. Tony whistles. That's dark, he says, even for a guy who likes sitting on rocks in space. Steve looks at Clark. Is that possible? He asks. Clark looks down at his hands. I don't know, he says. I've never dealt with something like this. But if there's even a chance, we have to stop him. How? Natasha asks. We destroyed his ship near Titan. He keeps acting through agents and energy. We're punching shadows. Strange traces a circle in the air. It shows a map of the solar system with glowing threads between Earth, the Sun, and a point beyond Mars. The convergence will have a heart, Strange says, a core point where the rules are bent the most. The time stone shows it forming not on Earth's surface, but between our planet and the Sun, a kind of storm eye in space. That is where the final bridge will cross. Thor grips his hammer tighter. Then we meet the storm where it is born, he says. Tony points at the map. We take a team up there, he says. We shut down whatever device or spell Thanos is using to steer the convergence. We cut the anchor line. Steve nods slowly. We make a plan, he says. We need fighters, brains, and someone who can talk to cosmic forces. He looks at Strange, at Thor, at Tony, at Bruce, at Nat, at Peter, then at Superman. You're on that team, Steve says. You're the anchor. You have to be there, or we can't break the link. And I'm the bomb, Clark says softly, if he takes control of me. He thinks of being controlled, of mind tricks from his own world, of magic, of a purple hand on his chest. He looks at the shard in the lab, still cracked, still humming. Then we build our own leash, Clark says. One I agree to. Tony's eyes narrow. Explain. We use red light, Clark says. Your fields, but not as a gun in the hands of one man. As a safety line I can pull myself. If Thanos tries to turn me into a weapon, you hit the switch. You cut me off, even if it leaves me helpless. Steve shakes his head at once. That's too much, he says. We don't sacrifice you as a tactic. This isn't sacrifice, Clark says. This is trust. I'm telling you my biggest weakness and handing you the key. That's what partners do. Natasha watches him, eyes unreadable. You're willing to risk being left powerless in the middle of a convergence, she says. I'm willing to risk me, Clark says, not everyone else. Tony thinks of the red spectrum network Ross wants to build, of switches and chains. If we do this, Tony says slowly, we do it our way. No secret override in Ross's pocket. No World Council deciding when to kill the lights. We build a device tied to this team, to a protocol we all agree on. Agreed, Steve says. Strange nods. It will be very dangerous regardless, he says. But it may be the only way to keep Thanos from using you as a blade. Thor claps Clark on the shoulder, a little too hard. You trust us with your life, he says. We will return the favor. Peter lifts a hand. Can I, vote that we not push the red button unless we really have to, he asks. Everyone smiles, just a little. The plan for the convergence operation comes together in pieces. Tony and Shuri talk through a secure line, arguing fast and bright about red spectrum emitters, power drains and shield harmonics. Bruce and Banner's other side test how long red light can hit Superman before his cells go into dangerous shock. Strange and Wong stand over maps of magical ley lines that now stretch into space. They draw circles with symbols that represent gravity, time, and the thin skin between worlds. Cap runs drills with the field team. Natasha checks gear. Thor tests how Mjolnir behaves near small, controlled shards of crystal energy. Superman trains himself in a new way, learning to fight when weak. He stands inside a red-lit room at the edge of the compound. Tony installed emitters in the ceiling. Bruce watches from behind glass with a scanner. "How do you feel?" Bruce asks. "Like someone tied weights to every bone," Clark says. He can still lift them, but it takes work. Sweat drips down his neck. "Good," Bruce says. "You need to know where your floor is, how much you can do when you're almost empty." They run drills. Clark practices short flights, controlled landings, grapples without using full strength. He learns to count seconds when the emitters are on, so he knows how fast his power drops. On the practice field outside, Steve waits. When Clark leaves the red-lit room, Steve tosses him a shield. Not the main vibranium one, but a training disc. "Throw it," Steve says. Clark does. It flies fast, but not at supersonic speed. It bounces off a dummy and comes back. Steve catches it. "You're learning to control the edges," Steve says. "That matters as much as your top speed." Clark nods. "On my Earth, I always had to hold back," he says. "Here, I have to learn how to not reach too far." Steve smiles. "Welcome to the club," he says. They spar, light and careful. Steve shows him how to move when you're not the strongest in the room. Clark listens. Night before launch. Clark stands alone on the roof of the compound, staring up at the stars. The tear above New York has grown again, a thin, bright wound between clouds. He hears the door open behind him. Tony steps out, holding 2 cups. "Decaf," Tony says. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation." Clark takes one with a small smile. "Thanks." They stand in silence for a moment. "You know," Tony says, "if someone told me a few years ago that I'd be building a kill switch for a flying alien who saves cats from trees, I would have called them crazy." "I know you're not building a kill switch," Clark says. "You're building a failsafe." "Those words sound very similar when you're the guy inside the circuit," Tony answers. He looks up at the tier. "When we go up there," Tony says, "you're going to be the biggest target in 2 universes. Thanos wants you. Ross is going to watch every move you make, hoping you slip. People down here will see only what's on their screens." "I know," Clark says. "Why do you keep doing it?" Tony asks. "You could have gone back to your Earth, tried to fix that mess instead." Clark watches the stars. Somewhere beyond them, his own sun shines on his own city. "I heard a cry for help," he said. "It doesn't matter what map it was on. That's the whole thing. If I start saying, 'These people count, these don't,' then I'm not Superman anymore. I'm just another man with a flag and a line." Tony snorts softly. "You talk like Steve," he says. "It's annoying." He sips his drink. "For the record," Tony adds, "I don't trust many people with my life. I trust this team. You're starting to be on that list." Clark smiles a little. "That means more than you think," he says. Tony waves his hand. "Don't get mushy," he says. "We've got a convergence to crash." Morning. The convergence storm begins. From orbit, it looks like a web of light stretching between Earth and the Sun. Thin threads of energy, once invisible, now glow bright. Space warps. Solar flares twist in odd paths. On the ground, people see strange things. For a few seconds at a time, streets blur, and they see other streets laid over them. Different cars, different buildings. A woman in New York looks out her window and, for one heartbeat, sees a daily planet globe that does not exist in this world. In Metropolis on Superman's Earth, a man looks up and sees, for one heartbeat, Stark Tower's faded A. The worlds are brushing against each other. Sirens wail, planes divert. Strange's sanctum shakes. It's starting, Strange says. We go now. The team boards their ride. Not a Quinjet this time. Something Tony, Shuri, and Rocket, through a very rough comms link, mocked up in record time. A hybrid craft with vibranium bones, arc reactor heart, and a Bifrost-linked engine. Welcome to the Stormbreaker, Tony says, patting the hull. It's part ship, part dimension surfboard. Try not to puke. The team, Superman, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Thor, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, because he argued until Steve and Tony gave in. Wong and Bruce stay behind to guard the Shard and monitor the convergence from Earth. T'Challa prepares Wakanda's shields for impact, in case the storm touches ground. They strap in. Strange opens a portal in front of the ship, linked to the growing storm eye. Thor channels Bifrost energy into the engines. Tony pilots, hands steady on the controls. 3, Tony says. 2, 1. The Stormbreaker shoots forward and up, through the portal and into the storm. The space between Earth and the Sun is no longer empty. Light bends in odd shapes. Threads of energy twist like slow-moving rivers. The Stormbreaker rides between them, hull humming. Superman floats outside the ship, flying alongside as escort. Red and blue against a sea of gold and violet. Stay close, Strange calls through the comm. The lines are unstable. Touch the wrong one and you might fall through to somewhere else. Somewhere else, like where? Peter asks, nervous. Best not to test it, Strange says. They see it then. At the center of the web, halfway between Earth and the Sun, hangs a structure that is not quite a ship and not quite a rock. It looks grown, not built, from black metal and cracked stone, with shards of crystal embedded in it like teeth. Energy flows through it from the Sun, from Earth, and from somewhere beyond space. That's our target, Steve says. That, Thor says, is a throne for a madman. As if on cue, a hologram flickers into life above the structure. Thanos' face fills the space, vast and calm. Children, Thanos says, voice carrying through the vacuum as if by his will alone. You come to the heart of the storm. Good. Superman feels the weight of that gaze on him. Kryptonian, Thanos says, your courage is impressive. You cross worlds to stop a hand you have never seen. You bleed for people who will fear you. You are almost worthy of the part you play. I'm not your part, Superman says, voice hard. I'm not your tool. Thanos' lips curl. You are a fulcrum, Thanos says, a point where two realities meet. I do not need your consent to use you, only your presence. The hologram fades. The structure lights up. Beams of energy shoot out toward Earth and the Sun. The threads of the convergence thicken, pulling on gravity, on time, on every atom. Alarm scream in the Stormbreaker. Shields at 70%, Tony says. We are in the oven. Get us to the core, Steve says. We stick to the plan. The plan is simple on paper. Land on the structure, fight through defenses, find the central control nexus, and shut it down or rewire it. In practice, it goes sideways fast. Defense drones rise from the structure. Dark, slim things with curved blades and glowing eyes. They fly in swarms, firing violet beams. Thor and Iron Man peel off to engage them. Thor throws lightning, smashing clusters. Tony weaves through, blasting. Strange throws shields around the ship, deflecting shots. Nat and Steve brace at the loading ramp, ready to jump as soon as they latch on. Superman flies ahead, punching a path through the drones. His fists hit metal, drones shatter, but each hit sends a small pulse down the lines, feeding the storm. Every time you strike, he learns you better, Strange warns. Then we'll teach him a lesson he can't use, Clark answers. They reach the surface. The Stormbreaker clamps onto the dark rock with magnetic feet. The ramp drops. Steve, Nat, Peter and Thor jump out, weapons ready. Strange floats. Tony steps out of the armor for a second to adjust a device on his wrist, then snaps it back on. Superman lands next to them. They stand together on the strange surface, space all around, lines of light pulling in from sun and earth. Iconic team moment. Superman, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, in a line on an alien structure between worlds, storm raging around them. Avengers, Steve says. He pauses, glances at Superman. And friends, he adds, let's end this. They move as one toward the core. Inside the structure, things get worse. The halls bend in impossible angles. Gravity shifts. Sometimes up is sideways. Sometimes down pulls toward the sun. Strange leads with glowing sigils in his hands, correcting their path. This place sits in between laws, Strange says. It uses bits of both universes' rules. Be careful where you step. At one point, Peter steps onto what looks like solid floor and almost falls into an image of Metropolis Street layered under their own. Superman grabs him by the back of his suit and yanks him back. Whoa, Peter gasps. Thanks, Mr. Kent. Call me Clark, Clark says. Okay, Mr. Clark, Peter says, then blushes under his mask. They fight smaller defenses, twisted things made from both Chitauri metal and Kryptonian crystal, mouths full of bright light. Nat plants charges on power conduits. Thor smashes central beams. Steve uses his shield to ricochet blasts back at turrets. Tony and Strange track the energy flows. It all leads to one chamber, Strange says. The Nexus. They reach a wide circular room at the heart. Columns of energy rise from floor to ceiling, connecting to a floating device at the center. The device looks like a cage built from shards. Pieces of black crystal, some familiar from the lab scans, some not. Inside the cage floats a small, pulsing orb of light that feels, to Superman, like his own cells. He staggers. What is that? He asks. Bruce's voice crackles over comms from Earth. He has hacked into the Stormbreaker's feed. Clark, Bruce says, I'm looking at your readings and the cores. That orb is built from your signature, from the energy you gave the shard when you broke it. Thanos copied the imprint and made a little piece of you. A fake sun, Clark says, made from me. Strange's eyes widen. He doesn't just want to use you, Strange says. He wants to replace you. If he breaks you, the system will use the copy. It will act like you chose the outcome. Steve looks around the chamber. So we smash the cage, grab the orb, and shut this down, Steve says. Wait, Tony says. Everything here is tuned to that orb. If we yank it without a plan, the whole system might go wild. The convergence could rush to fill the gap. We need a controlled shutdown. They argue fast. The twist hits while they do. Alarms blare in a different tone. The room's light shifts from violet gold to a flickering red. On Earth, Ross has decided to act. In a control bunker far from the compound, Ross and his team look at readings from the convergence. They are inside the structure, an analyst says. This is our chance. If we flip the red spectrum net now, we can cut Superman off from the storm. Maybe break Thanos' grip. Or kill them all, someone else says. Ross stares at the monitors. "This is our planet," he says. "We make the call." He hits the switch. Red spectrum satellites activate in orbit around Earth. Beams of invisible light shoot outward, not just toward Superman, but toward the entire structure, because the system locks onto his imprint now woven into the nexus. In the core chamber, Clark cries out. The orb in the cage flares red. The beams of energy from the sun and Earth stutter. Gravity lurches. "Red light," Bruce says, horrified. "They turned on the net. It's hitting the whole system, not just him." Strange feels his magic twist. Thor staggers. Tony's HUD fills with error codes. Peter grabs a column to keep from floating off the floor. Nat slams into a wall and grunts. "What just happened?" Steve shouts. "Ross happened," Tony growls. "He flipped the wrong switch." Thanos' laugh echoes through the chamber, not from speakers, but from the stones themselves. "Thank you, humans," Thanos says. "You have given me the last piece." The orb at the center absorbs the red spectrum energy instead of being weakened by it. It stabilizes. It pulses stronger. "You see," Thanos says, "you cannot control what you do not understand. You tried to chain your savior. You fed my machine. Now the convergence will complete with or without his will." Outside, the web of light thickens. Earth and the sun pull harder at each other. Somewhere in another universe, Clark's homeworld feels a similar tug. The convergence event has started. It cannot be simply turned off. Steve looks at Clark. "What do we do?" Steve asks. Clark straightens, gasping, but still standing. "We go deeper," Clark says. "We break it from the inside, even if it hurts." He looks at Tony. "Is our failsafe still ours?" he asks. Tony checks his wrist. The small device there glows faintly. "The personal switch is still separate," Tony says. "Ross hit the global net, but this one is local. If you tell me to, I can cut your connection to the orb and the storm. It might break the anchor link. It might also tear this room apart." "Good," Clark says. "We keep that as our last move." He steps toward the cage. "Everyone else," he says, "keep Thanos busy." "On it," Steve says. He raises his shield and charges toward a set of emerging defenses as the room sprouts new turrets and constructs. Thor calls lightning in the enclosed space, careful to aim. Strange weaves shields and counterspells. Nat and Peter move along the edges, taking out generators and nodes. Superman walks straight into the flickering cage. The crystal shards around the orb cut his skin. Red and violet light burn his hands. He reaches out anyway. His fingers close around the sphere that feels like a piece of his own heart. He gasps. Images flood his mind. His Earth, breaking or healing depending on where the energy flows. This Earth, drowning in light or ripping apart along old scars. Thanos' face, calm as he half turns away from both, satisfied with any outcome that halves the living. Clark feels the strain of two realities on his shoulders. He knows then that to stop this, he may have to let one side of that weight go. He holds the orb tighter. "Tony," he says, "get ready with that switch." The core hum rises to a roar. Power scaling interlude 2. Doctor Strange's field notes recorded in the storm. Superman stands at the center of a convergence machine tuned to his very soul. His strengths are clear. Almost limitless power under a yellow sun. An ethic that refuses to bend. And a will that keeps him moving even when red spectrum light burns his cells. But his limits are now just as clear. If exposed to enough red spectrum energy, he weakens, and his connection to the shard can be hijacked. If he pushes beyond those limits to hold back two universes at once, his body may survive, but his mind and sense of self could fracture. The failsafe that Stark built can sever his link to the storm and maybe save reality, but it may leave him trapped between worlds, powerless or lost in the space between. The choice to use it cannot be mine. It must be his. The core chamber shakes. Superman stands inside the cage of shards, hands around the glowing orb that feels like a copy of his own power. Red light and violet light run over his arms. The convergent storm roars through the structure and into him. Outside, space bends. Between Earth and the sun, the web of energy thickens. Lines of light pull tight. Tiny chunks of matter shimmer, half here and half somewhere else. Time slips, seconds stretch. On Earth, people see it. In New York, a woman on a rooftop gasps as the skyline flickers. For one heartbeat, she sees a different city laid over her own, with a tall building topped by a giant globe that says Daily Planet. Then it snaps back. In Metropolis, on Superman's Earth, Lois Lane runs to the window of the Daily Planet. For a moment, she sees Stark Tower faint in the air, the old A traced in light. Her heart lurches. Clark, she whispers, without knowing why. The worlds pull closer. In the chamber, Thanos' voice echoes like thunder in a cave. "You feel it, Kryptonian," Thanos says. "Two realities asking you to choose. That is all any universe is. A set of choices. Half must fall, so half can stand." Superman's grip tightens on the orb. He sees flashes inside it. A Sokovian street, cracked again. People falling into a glowing line in the ground. A Kansas field, his mother's house fading like smoke as the ground slips away. New York split by two sets of shadows. Metropolis's glass towers cut with Stark's metal. He feels the machine's logic. It wants to use the anchor to decide which parts of each world stay solid. It wants to weigh lives like numbers on a scale. "No," he says through his teeth. "I won't let you pick. I won't be your knife." Pain shoots up his arms. The orb tries to pull his mind deeper. Behind him, the team fights hard. Turrets drop from the walls, firing. Black, twisted drones leap from cracks. Some have Chitauri patterns. Some carry pieces of alien crystal. Captain America stands in the center, shield up, taking hits. He barks orders. "Nat, Peter, clear the flanks. Thor, take that top node. Strange, we need a shield on the ceiling now." Strange throws his hands up. A dome of golden light forms over them, blocking an incoming blast. "I cannot hold this forever," Strange warns. "The rules here want to break the shield apart." "Make forever last 5 more minutes," Tony says from the air, firing repulsors at a heavy turret. "That's all we need." Natasha dodges a clawed construct and plants an explosive on a power column. It blows, sending a ripple through the chamber. The floor tilts for a second, then steadies. Peter swings on a web line, kicks a drone into another, then lands near Steve, chest heaving. "Are we sure this isn't like above our pay grade?" Peter says. Steve knocks a blast aside with his shield. "It's above everyone's pay grade," he says. "That's why we're here." In the cage, Superman hears them but can barely turn his head. The orb is louder now. It whispers in his own voice. "Let this part go," it says. "Cut this city. Cut that field. Save more by losing some." He grits his teeth. "That's not how I do this," he says. "I don't pick who counts." He thinks fast in the pain. The machine wants him to make a choice between worlds. Thanos wants a neat number, half, clean, balanced, cruel. Superman's code is simple. No one dies if he can stand in the way. But here, he cannot save everyone. Not every brick, not every leaf. Something will change, no matter what he does. He sees a third path. If he stays as the anchor, the machine will use his mind to shape the merge. Thanos will keep pushing, trying to twist his ethic. Even if Clark wins, he would live the rest of his life second-guessing every atom that moved. If he lets the orb, the copy, stay, the machine will treat it as him and go ahead without a living will. Thanos will turn that fake Superman into his tool. But if he can rip the anchor out of the system at the right moment, take the choice away from both of them, the storm might drop to a safer state. Not perfect, not painless, but stable. Two worlds side by side, touching only at light scars, not ripped and mashed together. To do that, he has to let the machine try to use him all the way. He has to pull as much of the storm into himself as he can, and then he has to let Tony cut him loose. "Tony," Superman says, voice shaking, "the failsafe. When I say the word, you hit it, no matter what you see, no matter what happens to me." Tony hovers just outside the cage. Red error lines flicker across his HUD. His gut crawls. "That switch might fry your link to everything," Tony says. "Your powers, your way home, your self. You're asking me to gamble you." "I am," Clark says, "because I know myself. I'd rather be lost than watch both worlds burn. You're the one person in this room stubborn enough to hit the button even if you hate it." Tony is quiet for a long second. "Kid," he says softly, then catches himself. "Clark, you sure?" Superman's arms shake, cracks spider across the shards around him. "Yes," he says. "We don't do half measures. We do the right thing all the way." Steve hears that, even through the noise. He meets Tony's eye. "If he says that's his line," Steve says, "we back him." Thor nods. "He chooses his own fate," Thor says, "as all warriors should." Natasha reloads, eyes cold. "I'll get you out if there's anything left to pull," she says. Peter swallows hard behind his mask and gives a shaky thumbs up. Strange's eyes narrow. He sees 1,000 futures in a blink, and most end badly. But a handful, just a few, shine brighter. "I will try to hold the edges together while you do this," Strange says. "But understand, once the storm settles in a new shape, I may not be able to change it again. This is a one-time spell." Superman nods. "Then we make it count," he says. He closes his eyes and pulls. He opens himself to the orb. Energy floods into him, bright, fierce, wild. He feels the sun itself, this universe's sun, pouring through the machine, through the shard paths, into his body. He feels Earth's gravity and his own Earth's gravity pulling on him at once. Space stretches. His mind sees both planets in one glance. On one side, blue and green Earth of the MCU, Wakanda's shield, New York's towers, Sokovia's scars, Asgard's ruins drifting in memory. On the other, his home's Earth, Metropolis and Smallville. Gotham in the distance, always in shadow. People he loves, people he failed. He feels the storm trying to stack them, to line up similar points and press. He could pick. He could shout, "This city, that field, this river, that sky." The machine would listen. Thanos would smile. He refuses. Instead, he pulls the storm tighter into himself, as if he is trying to drink it all. Outside, the web of light thins a little as more lines dive into the core chamber. On Earth, people feel a pressure in their ears, then relief, like a headache fading for a second. In Metropolis, Lois stumbles as the Stark Tower ghost fades. She grips the windowsill. "Whatever you're doing," she whispers to the empty air, "do it fast." In Wakanda, Shuri's screens flash warning symbols. "Energy spike at the convergence center," Shuri says. "He's pulling the load into one node, into himself." T'Challa watches the sky. "Then we pray for his strength," T'Challa says, "and we prepare for the fall if he fails." In the chamber, Superman's veins glow under his skin. His eyes burn with heat, not as beams, but as raw sun. His heart pounds like a drum. His thoughts start to blur at the edges. He hears Thanos again, but farther away now. "You cannot bear that much," Thanos says. "You will break, and my machine will catch the pieces." Superman grins, even in pain. "You don't know me," he says. He feels the line, the point where his body is as full as it can get without tearing, the point where one more drop will shatter him. He takes just that one more drop. "Tony," he gasps. "Now." The word is home. Tony's fingers are already hovering over the failsafe on his wrist. The device is simple. A red button that activates a local, focused red spectrum burst tied to Clark's signature. Tony hears the word. He thinks, in one flash, of every time he failed to act soon enough, of the wormhole over New York, of the kid in the suit who died on another world, in another timeline, of second chances. "Okay, Boy Scout," Tony says. "Let's hit the lights." He slams the button. A beam of pure red spectrum energy erupts from the device and slams straight into Superman's chest. Not wide, not global, just a narrow spike tuned to the anchor inside him. For a second, the whole world goes red in Clark's eyes. Then the connection snaps. The orb in his hand shatters into dust. The lines in the convergence web stutter. The machine screams like metal tearing. Energy that was moving in neat paths suddenly has no anchor. Strange throws everything he has into his spells. "Now," Strange shouts, "all of you, hold this together." He opens the eye of Agamotto. The time stone glows, but he does not rewind or fast forward. He uses it to slow the breaking, to give the universe time to find a new balance. Thor plants his feet and raises Mjolnir high. He drags stray bolts of energy away from the team and throws them into empty space. Tony tilts his repulsors upward, creating a counterfield, nudging the raw power into safe channels. Steve braces, holding the shield above Nat and Peter as chunks of the ceiling fall and wild light strikes. Natasha drags Peter behind a column as a blast hits where he stood. "We are not dying in space," she snaps. "Not today." Peter clamps webs on any loose shards that fly toward his friends, yanking them away. The chamber shakes. The structure groans. Outside, the web between Earth and the sun changes. Instead of tight cords pulling worlds together, the lines loosen and spread. They become thinner, like faint scars of light instead of ropes. The close overlap flashes fade. In New York and Metropolis, the ghost skylines blink out. Each city stands alone again, still shaken, but whole. In the solar system, gravity settles. Orbits wobble, then steady. The convergence does not vanish. It turns into something smaller. A one-time storm that leaves behind a few new rules, a few new doors half remembered. Not a full merge, not a collapse. In the throne room far away, Thanos grips the arm of his chair hard enough to crack stone. "Interesting," Thanos says. Ebony Moore, bruised and bandaged, kneels. "His will severed your design," Moore says. "The humans helped him cut the anchor." Thanos watches the fading lines of the storm. "The machine is broken," Thanos says, "but the universes live. The Kryptonian is no longer tied to both. He chose one." He smiles a tiny cold smile. "He made a choice after all," Thanos says. "He's not beyond my understanding, only beyond my reach, for now." He turns his gaze to a different set of stars, where Infinity Stones still wait. "There are other ways to balance a universe," he says. In the core chamber, the light dies. Dust floats slowly in a space that no longer knows which way down is. The cage of shards is gone. The columns are cracked. Some parts of the structure crumble into raw rock. In the center, Superman hangs in the air, limp, arms spread, head down. For a second, no one moves. Then Steve pushes off the broken floor and swims through the low gravity to reach him. "Clark," Steve calls. "Can you hear me?" Superman does not answer. His suit is torn. Cuts mark his skin. The glow under his skin has faded. He looks, for the first time, like a very tired man in a broken set of clothes. Tony and Nat reach them. Thor floats nearby, ready to grab them if the whole place gives way. "Vitals?" Nat asks. Tony scans with his armor. "He's alive," Tony says, and the breath everyone has been holding comes out. But his energy levels are strange. Kryptonian's signature is there, but weaker. And what? Steve asks. Tony frowns behind his visor. "And I'm not picking up the second world anymore," Tony says. "That extra pattern the Shard showed whenever he looked back home. It's gone." Dr. Strange drifts closer, cloak moving by itself, green light still fading from the eye. "The bridge between his world and ours is closed," Strange says quietly, "sealed by his act. The convergence finished in a way I did not expect. Two worlds, separate, but now aware of each other in deep ways. New scars, new echoes, but no open door." Steve looks at Clark's still face. "So he can't go home," Steve says. Strange nods once. "He is tuned now," Strange says. "Like a radio locked on one station. This universe is his frame. The other is out of reach, unless something even more dangerous than this storm tears the wall again." Peter grips a broken strut, eyes wet. "So he saved both worlds," Peter says, voice small, "but he lost his own." Thor bows his head. "He stands with us now," Thor says. "Midgard and all its realms. We shall honor that." Natasha sighs. "We get him back to the ship," she says. "We argue about the rest later." They haul him onto the Stormbreaker. The ship shakes as the last bits of the structure fall away into space. "Strange," Tony says, taking the pilot seat. "Can you get us a path home?" Strange opens a portal, feeling his way through currents that have shifted. The path is rough, like a road after an earthquake. "I can," Strange says, "but the ride will not be smooth." "Nothing about today was," Tony mutters. They fly through the ring of light and back toward Earth. When they land at the compound, med teams rush the ramp. Wong and Bruce are there first. Bruce runs scanners over Clark as they lay him on a reinforced bed. "Cells are active," Bruce says, "but different. It's like he burned out the old pattern and grew a new one in the same shell." "In English?" Nat asks. Bruce rubs his face. "He's still Superman," Bruce says, "but his power is smaller, bound to this sun, this universe, not split between two. He's not a universe anchor anymore. He's just a very strong guy from another world." "Just," Tony snorts. Strange steps to the window. Outside, the tear above New York is now a thin, dark seam of cloud, not a wound of light. "It is done," Strange says. "For now." On the screens, reports flow in. Minor earthquakes, some strange lights, but no cities lost, no continents broken. Both realities settle. In Metropolis, Lois stands on the rooftop again. The sky is a simple blue. She feels something in her chest twist and then ease, like a string that was tied to a distant place has been cut. She looks up and smiles sadly. "Wherever you are," she says, "you did it. I know it." She puts her hand over her heart, where a small, hidden S necklace rests. Then she goes back inside to tell a story no one will ever quite believe. Days later, the politics hit. The Accords Council meets again, this time under even more cameras. Images play behind them. The convergence storm, The structure between Earth and the Sun, the Stormbreaker, Superman in the cage, the red failsafe burst, the collapse. Reporters ask hard questions. Did General Ross's red spectrum net help or almost doom us? Who gave Tony Stark the right to build an independent failsafe? Is Superman now weaker or just less dangerous to your control? Ross sits at the table, face tight. He knows the answer many will give. His move almost fed Thanos the last piece. He flipped the net without full data. He tried to use a weapon before he understood the battlefield. Some nations call for his resignation. The Wakandan delegate speaks clearly. "We have learned," she says, "that trying to own power we do not understand makes us tools of those who do. We will not build a world rule based on fear of Superman. We will build one based on partnership with those who choose to protect." She looks at Clark, who sits at the side, pale but upright in a simple suit. "Our proposal," she says, "is an inter-reality compact. Superman will not be forced under the Sokovia Accords as a weapon of any one state. Instead, he will serve as a special advisor and guardian under a council that includes Earth nations and the Sanctum, and he will work with the Avengers, not above them." Ross opens his mouth to argue. Steve speaks first. "We also agree," Steve says, "that no one should have a secret switch that can turn him off without his consent. The failsafe Tony built was used with Clark's approval to stop a cosmic event. It is now in his hands and the hands of this team, not in the pocket of any one government." Tony nods. "No more surprise red lights in hearings," he says. "That didn't go well." Some delegates grumble, others nod. Natasha leans to her mic. "If you want trust," she says, "you have to give some too. He already gave everything he had. He can't go home because of what he did for us." That line hits. People in the hall murmur. Some look away. Some stare at Clark with new eyes. Ross looks at the numbers, the votes, the cameras. He knows when he has lost a battle. He does not step down, not yet, but his power shrinks. The global red spectrum net is shut down and dismantled under Wakandan and Shield watch, its pieces logged and locked. Smaller controlled red light devices remain, but under strict joint oversight, a last clear level tool for when someone with Kryptonian power truly loses their mind. Clark signs the compact. He does it with a steady hand. "I agree to stand with you," he says, "not over you. I agree to be judged when I fail, and I agree that no one should hold power without someone watching. That includes me." The room accepts it. The cameras carry the image around, the world. Life shifts. In Wakanda, children play in the streets wearing cloth capes with painted S symbols and Black Panther masks. They argue in small voices about who gets to be T'Challa and who gets to be Superman when they fight off imaginary aliens. In Sokovia, the man who threw a rock at Superman the first day sits in a cafe. On the wall behind the counter, someone has pinned a newspaper photo. Superman holding up his hands under the tear, straining, with Sam Wilson hauling him into the jet. The man stares at the picture a long time. He buys a coffee for the little boy, who once asked his mother if the alien would drop them. The boy now draws red and blue figures in the margins of his homework. In New York, Spider-Man swings between buildings and sometimes sees a red and blue blur ahead of him. He whoops every time. "Race you," Peter shouts. Superman laughs in the wind and slows, just enough to let the kid keep up. On the Avengers compound roof, Steve and Tony stand with Clark one evening. The tear above the city is now just a faint darker band in the clouds, like an old scar. "You're really staying," Steve says. Clark nods. "My Earth is safe," he says. "I can feel it. Even if I can't hear it anymore. They have heroes, friends. They'll be okay. This world needs me here now. And I need it. Tony raises an eyebrow. What? We're that charming? Tony asks. Clark smiles. You argue like family, he says. And you listened when I said push the button. That matters. Steve chuckles. So what's your new rule? Steve asks. You lost some things. You gained others. Where does that leave your code? Clark thinks. Same code, he says. Simple words. No one dies if I can stand in the way. But now I add one line, and I don't stand alone. Tony looks out at the world. Good, Tony says. Because we're going to need all of us. Purple Chin is still out there. Thanos will move again, Strange says, stepping out of a portal behind them, cloak fluttering. The convergence failed him, but he learned. The stones still call to him. Clark nods. Then when he comes, Clark says, he won't just find one Kryptonian, he'll find us all. Steve lifts his shield. Thor raises his hammer. Tony taps his arc reactor. Strange's hands glow. Peter lands on the rail, perched and eager. They stand there for a moment, the new lineup under a sky that finally looks calm. An iconic team, changed by a man who fell from another universe. Far away, in a dark room lined with screens, a quiet rival plans. A technician, once on Ross's staff, now works late, copying old red spectrum code onto private drives. He watches Clark sign the compact and narrows his eyes. Power like that shouldn't be left to people who feel things, he mutters. It should be in hands that make hard calls. He uploads a file labeled Project Red Dawn to an off-the-book server. The future shifts, just a little. In a small apartment in Queens, a woman named Maria flips channels after a long shift. She stops on a news story. The screen shows a simple image, the Avengers A symbol next to the Kryptonian S. Under it, a headline, Alien Hero Stays to Protect Earth. Maria's young son sits beside her, hugging a pillow. Do you think he'll come here if we're in trouble? The boy asks. Maria looks at the window, at the city outside, at the stars she can't see. I think, she says slowly, that if we all do our part, he won't have to. But if it gets bad, yes, I think he will. The boy smiles, feeling safer. He does not know all the costs. He does not know about broken bridges between worlds or red lights in space. He just sees a symbol and believes someone cares. Later that night, Clark stands alone for a moment on the compound roof. He looks up at the stars. He cannot hear his old home anymore. No police sirens from Metropolis. No heartbeat from his mother's farm. The silence hurts, but he hears something else. The slow, steady breath of a world that almost died and lived. The faint hum of strangers' wards around the shard, now inert in a deep vault. The rustle of Wakandan tech in the distance. The soft whir of Peter's web shooters as the kid finishes a late patrol. He smiles. He is not the same Superman he was. Not as strong, not as free. But he is here, and here is enough. He steps off the building and rises into the air, cape catching the wind. Below, lights glow. Above, stars burn. He flies toward the city, toward trouble, toward whatever comes next. Not as a stranger holding two worlds apart, but as a guardian standing with one. Codex note: in the records of this universe, Kal-El of Krypton is no longer a multiversal anchor, but is listed as Superman, Inter-Reality Guardian, bound by the compact to stand with Earth's defenders rather than above them. His lost home remembered in lore and legend, but beyond the reach of any safe bridge.